Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. All right, welcome back for another episode of the Freight 360 podcast. There's 214 other episodes, as this is episode 215. So make sure to check out all the other content. Subscribe, leave us comments, send us your questions, share us with all your friends in the industry. Make sure to check out freight360.net. It's our entire library of all of our content and our back, what do they call it, the back library, whatever
back catalog.
Back catalog. There you go. Thanks, Ben. And don't forget, if you ever want to learn more about our training, check out the Freight Broker Basics course. It's a full-length, self-paced course that teaches you everything from how to open up your own brokerage, build up your customer base, your carrier base, and even hire the right employees. So this episode is brought to you by Blue Book Services. Are you looking to quickly identify qualified sales prospects? Looking to develop trusted, sustainable business partnerships? Well, look no further. The Lumber Blue Book is an online directory and credit resource for the lumber and forest products industry, covering mills, manufacturers, wholesalers, and retailers. Their database of over 23,000 lumber companies can be searched and segmented to develop sales and marketing campaigns. Members receive access to real-time credit and business information for companies throughout the industry. To learn more, go to lumberbluebook.com and click Join Today. That's lumberbluebook.com. Ben, what's happening today, my man?
Living the dream, man. Hustling, freight, trying to just, I don't know. That's pretty much it, man.
Living the dream.
Making prospecting calls and hustling freight. How was your trip to Disney, speaking of? You're just getting back into things.
Yeah. So today's Thursday. We're recording a little later in the week. I got back about midnight, a little after midnight last night. So it was good. It was a good, nice trip down to Disney World, though, and I got the kiddos enjoying the parks and all that stuff. So nice to have some warm weather. And I come back, and it's literally going to be 72 degrees here in Buffalo today in late October. So your birthday's coming up, isn't it? Is it this weekend?
Yeah, day after tomorrow, Saturday.
Happy almost birthday. And make sure you guys all flood Ben's inbox wishing him happy birthday. So, but yeah, good stuff. Sports. I mean, I'll start off by saying the Bills are just really frustrating everybody. This will release on Friday, so who knows what will happen for Thursday Night Football. I'm going to hope the Bills can bounce back and take a win over the Buccaneers, but had an embarrassing loss to the Patriots last Sunday. And funny story, I was in Disney about the same time last year with my kids, and the Bills lost an embarrassing game to the Jets. So I'm over 2 when I'm at Disney World with my kids and the Bills are playing. So maybe I can't do that ever again. But
after season or on the bye week next year.
Yeah, I have to plan it out or just not go. I don't think I'm going to go. I don't need to go to Disney anytime soon. I've been there enough time with my kids. But so yeah, other stuff. What is Steelers got? Is he got the Jags this weekend? Jacksonville?
I genuinely forgot already.
I think I was looking at it earlier. Let me see here.
Yes, it is.
Yep. Well, they embarrassed Buffalo, so hopefully you guys can take them down. So there's actually there's some like discussion about the Steelers in Buffalo. Is that Bills fans are like, man, we're looking at a conference champion. I'm sorry, division champion, and now we're like looking at maybe a wild card. And they're like, our luck, the friggin' Steelers are going to beat us out for like a wild card spot, and we're going to be out of the playoffs. But it's still early on. Steelers are 4-2 right now, though, man. It's crazy.
They weren't a good-looking 4, but I'll tell you what. I mean, I did get to watch the last game because it was finally televised down here, and it was a 4:00 game. It did not look great until the fourth quarter. I mean, it was definitely kind of a nail biter.
Were they playing that it was televised? Oh, it was televised because it was a 4:30 game. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They played the Rams. But yeah, I mean, hey, they pulled it off, found a way to win. And hey, I mean, if you find a way to win, that's the thing that matters at the end of the day. My buddy in golf always used to say, it's like, they don't ask you how, they just ask you how many. It's kind of the same thing with a win or a loss. Like, it doesn't really matter how you got there. It's a win or it's not.
So other sports, we're going into a World Series right now. So what surprised me, I thought the Phillies were going to go all the way in baseball,
I
just
think
kind of the
everyone
way
did.
that everything was shaping out, and they were up 3-2, and then they lost 2 straight and got eliminated by the Diamondbacks. So it's going to be Diamondbacks and the Rangers in the World Series. And what's interesting is they were both wild. I believe they were both wild card. Yeah, they were. They were both wild card teams. So not didn't have a bye or anything, or didn't have a advantage by skipping the wild card series or anything like that. But yeah, they just battled back and going to the World Series now. It's been a weird year for baseball. I haven't really followed too much of it, but this is a great time of year. You got like everything on. You got baseball, you got hockey, NBA,
Yep.
football. It's nuts. Anything else for sports? Anything in the golf world?
Nah.
No. All right. Well, we're going to do an awesome episode today, and it's going to be about the carrier side of things. We talk a lot about sales. We're going to talk about the carrier side of things. But first, let's give a shout out to our friends over at DAT, and we'll get into it.
Tired of struggling to find accurate rates and the right carriers for your freight? With DAT1, you can access more than 500 million posted loads and trucks every year. That's 3 times more capacity than any other load board. Plus, their integrated freight management system makes it easy to cover loads 24/7. They have the most trusted network of carriers, brokers, and shippers in the industry. You'll get real-time rates on every lane so you know exactly how much a shipment will cost before you commit to it. Plus, you get instant access to top bids from qualified carriers around the country. Get 10% off your first year of DAT1 when you use the link in the show notes.
Absolutely. I almost forgot some news, man. I want to bounce back and hit on some news real quick. So obviously Convoy was like the big thing. Did you see there was like a lot of obviously it's been over a week now, and people are saying like the reason. Have you seen like what the articles are saying about like the reason why they went down and all of that?
I haven't.
So
I'm
again, I was on vacation like the last week, so I wasn't totally in tune with it. But a lot of the stuff I read was like they neglected like the human element. Like they just thought they could pump money into like technology and it would solve all these problems. When the reality is, human beings and relationships are far more valuable than any technology. Like, yes, it'll
Yep.
enhance it, but you can't win at all without having that human element. It's kind of what a lot of the opinions and feedback was. So, not surprised to hear that.
Not at all. I mean, there's been a lot of stories around the tech industry and everything recently. And I mean, especially around the cost of capital, right? Like, it's all great until it isn't, but it's easy to make those things work a lot longer than they probably would otherwise when you don't have to pay for a cost of capital. When interest rates are like 0% and you can borrow as much as you need to gamble into the future, they'll do it. As soon as you have to pay for that risk, all of a sudden people start looking at, is this business really making money? Are they really cash flowing? Because the whole mentality of the past 10 years in Silicon Valley is like, growth is king. It doesn't matter if they're cash flowing. Just borrow enough money until it eventually cash flows. But like, that's not really how everything works. And it only
Yeah.
really works in an environment where it doesn't cost any money to borrow money. So in Convoy's example, right, like they borrowed tons of money, levered it up. And again, to your point, just hope technology was somehow going to solve everything. And the reality is our industry is a people business. It's a relationship business. It's the glue that holds every logistics company together, right? Like it's not the contracts. It's the people working with other people to solve problems for each other.
Yep. Exactly. In other news, and make sure you guys are subscribed to the newsletter. You can go right to our website, freight360.net, and there's a spot to put your email address in. We send out a market update every Thursday now, and I've been trying to include a visual that shows the rates for van, reefer, and flatbed. And if you look at them, they're pretty flat. Like it looks like we haven't seen a whole lot of movement on rates in the last like 6 months. They've kind of like, national averages, that is. You're going to see variance in certain areas around the country. Like, for example, Christmas tree season is coming up, right? We're in that time right now where people are either already started to or are getting ready to start shipping a lot of trees. And that's going to eat up a lot of your reefer and dry van capacity in certain areas in the Northwest and in the Northeast and wherever they're growing Christmas trees. So yeah, but rates kind of look stagnant here. And then the other thing, you sent me this article about rail cargo theft. So basically, I'll just kind of read it off here. It's summarized in our newsletter, but it says that over the past few years, there's been a notable increase in rail cargo theft, especially in the areas around ports of LA and Long Beach, with criminals targeting trains passing through the less populated regions. Thefts are typically crimes of opportunity, with thieves breaking into containers while trains are slow moving and they're pilfered goods to collect later. So, I mean, you've probably seen the pictures or videos on TV or on the internet, just like literally areas where people just broke into trains and there's just stuff all over the ground that they ripped out of there and were trying to steal. But the article was about Flexport. So they're establishing connections with various law enforcement agencies using advanced data analysis tools and recovered stolen goods. GPS trackers, opting for more secured train lines. Yeah. So basically, it's a big rail cargo theft is a big issue in the last few years, like the article says, and cargo theft in general seems to be one of those things. Like we're gonna have a episode probably in December with, is it Cargo Net, right?
Verisk, I believe, that is the parent company of CargoNet. You're talking about Sal, right?
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, curious because we talk a lot about the fraud in the industry and double brokering, but cargo theft is a big one as well. Whether it's someone threatening to hold your load hostage, or legitimately someone stealing a tractor or a trailer loads full of goods, or in this case, breaking into a train. So
yeah,
curious to see. I mean, trains just kind of very obviously seem like a bigger target, right? Versus a van that has one driver, because a train just has hundreds, right? Sometimes hundreds, 200, containers on board that can be broken into. So with not one person for every single trailer that's there. But yeah, man, we'll see. We'll see how everything pans out and how they crack down on the fraud there and the theft. But good stuff. That's our news for the week. Make sure, again, subscribe to the newsletter. Go to freight360.net. Throw your email address in the subscribe line there, and you'll get our Tuesday and our Thursday newsletter every single week. All right, cool. Let's get into our content today. We wanted to talk about building a good carrier network. And this is one of the things that I oftentimes think brokers overlook. They're like, oh, well, I've got to have a solid customer base, right? My book of business has to be pristine. I've got to have all these customers. Well, you can't do any of that and be successful and profitable if you don't have the other side of the equation, which is your carrier network, right? And my boss at Pierce Worldwide Logistics, he's the owner of the company. He always says anybody can go out there and post a load and find a truck off the load boards. What stands you apart from everybody else to be superior as a company is to have really strong carriers in your network that you don't have to go to the load boards for, right? Mm-hmm. The goal should be only use the load boards as a last resort, right? You should have a preferred network of carriers. Ideally, you should have a lot of TMS data internally that you can look at, load history, things like that. And just have relationships where you can call a carrier and find out what their capacity and their availability is versus just going out there and doing the old post and pray on the boards. So that's kind of how I want to set the stage. And if you remember our episode with Pardeep about 2 or 3 months ago, one of the really cool things that I've gotten to learn about his company over the years is that their last resort is the load boards. They have their loads get tendered over from customers, and they have carrier sales reps that will work to find capacity. And their goal number one is to go to their what they call preferred carriers. So they have a network of carriers that they've already vetted, trusted, worked with for a number of years now, and that's goal number one, is go to that existing carrier base where we already know these people. We know their track record and who they are. We're going to use them first. And then next up, we'll go through a variety of other things. And our last case scenario, we're going to post on the load board. So I think that's really cool to have that as a focus when it comes to brokering freight is having both sides of that equation. Ben, what have you like? I want to kind of go back to your early years with being at a big box W-2. What did that process look like for you guys? Was it a metric that they tracked, carrier utilization, or is it, hey, just get the loads covered, we don't really care? What did that look like?
There really wasn't anything related to carrier utilization. But even since then, I think they were one of the only companies that also had like ownership over carriers. And
Meaning what? Like a rep would be, hey, I own this carrier?
correct, or at least having first priority at it, right? And here's the thing: when you work in a very much larger company, it's viewed very differently than in other size companies, right? And I'll give you instances of why and how that plays out, right? Say you're in a tight market, right? And say your customer really needs a load moved. I go into the same system that everyone else in that organization does to look at that lane, right? So the broker who may have used or brought that carrier into the network for his customers' freight, say it's, Mike, right? Mike's been working with that carrier all year. They got negotiated good rates because they've been working with the same customer. They've worked on and off, you know what I mean, for consistently a long time. My customer all of a sudden has a last minute load they need a lot of help with. If I call that carrier and go, hey, I need you to run that same load Mike was running, and Mike has a load unexpectedly, like in an hour or two, like I now disrupted the service that Mike built through his relationships, right? So there is infighting to get access to carriers, especially reliable carriers with fair rates, right? Because everybody wants to work with them. And you need some type of guidance as to, are they always up for grabs? Is it first come, first serve? Or does the person that built the relationship have at least first shot? I ran into this a lot in drayage because I built out that aspect there with my customers. And then everybody else started to try to poach my carriers that I built and spent weeks and months developing relationships with to run a load here or there. Well, then my customer, when they needed them, I didn't have the same access because people are using them for other freight. So like that's how that system kind of plays out. And like I had to have to fight over it. I mean, literally would get into like disagreements and have things escalated to like upper management going like, well, this freight's got way higher margin. I've worked with them longer. Nobody should be able to use them without my approval. And that's the way some of them went.
Yeah, I mean, that's regardless of the good, the bad, and the ugly in that story. Is it goes to show how important a good carrier relationship is.
For sure.
It can save your day, or it can cost you a customer if something falls through.
Here's the thing too, I want to point out, right? Like I've now had the opportunity and the hard work of building a carrier base from scratch, and I've been able to access them that have already been there, right? And I think the thing that is most often overlooked by freight brokers is exactly what you said, is the value of having the carrier is half of the business. It is not 10%, 5%, it's half. Half comes from a customer, half comes from a carrier, right? And again, somebody might make the argument, well, if I get another truck and they pick it up and they give me a better rate, like why does my relationship matter as much as it does for the customer, right? And there is so much risk in using a carrier from a load board that you've never used. Even if they've been in business a while, even if they're a decent carrier and everything you see shows that they probably are a good carrier, your first time using anybody, there's a lot of risk there. Like, yep. You don't know how they manage their time. You don't know how their last load is before they get to your load, right? Like they could have a receiver and the carrier could do everything that they're supposed to do, but yet the place they deliver to every Wednesday and your load is Wednesday afternoon, and every time they deliver Wednesday morning, it could be an hour unload, it could be a 4-hour unload. That's not the carrier's fault, but all of that plays into the service that I'm paying for my customer, right? Are they going to have enough time to get there to check in on time? Is it a flip of a coin on whether or not they're going to have enough time where they just hope they'll make it? Those little decisions and how they operate their business all come into play into how the service is I'm packaging to put a price on for my customers, right? And the less you know, the more risk you have. So these relationships to me, in some ways, are even more valuable because I want to go even one step further. When you are prospecting, if you have no carrier base or no relationships, what are you really selling? This is what shippers have a fear over and why they don't want to work with brokers as sometimes a matter of policy, because they're terrified you're going to take their trusted freight that they care a lot about because it's their business, and you're going to gamble with the next cheapest truck that comes past their facility to put their load on. And that's terrifying. That's why there's a fear or a hesitancy to trust brokers out of the gate, because they don't know if you really have trusted carriers, or you're just going to pick the cheapest guy to run their freight and cross your fingers and hope everything goes well, right?
Yeah. I would challenge, or I shouldn't say challenge. I would suggest anybody out there listening, if you have the ability to, take a look at your metrics internally for your brokerage. Run a report that shows the activity for your carrier base. So, for example, let's say we're coming up at the end of October here. So, if you do year to date, it's 10 months worth of data. Look at how many loads you've done, and then how many loads went on each carrier, and then rank them from most loads ran to least. And I'm willing to bet there's a lot of one load carriers on there, a ton of, maybe two. Very, very rarely will you have a ton of carriers that run repeat business. And if you do, that's great. We ran this at a previous brokerage that I worked for. It's probably like 7 years ago. And I was shocked. I think it was like less than 1% of our carriers ran more than 20 loads for the year or something like that. And I was like, what? So like, it was such a transactional thing. And, with every single broker running their own book of business and their own operation, and we didn't have a carrier or procurement team that did that, everyone was really on their own. There really was no way to push the company in a direction. You just had to really try to entice people to build relationships with carriers themselves. But it's shocking, man. It really is. Being that transactional goes right back to what you said. It's so much risk. Every single time you're adding a new carrier, you have no idea what's going to happen.
Right. And again, it's not just the driver, right? And I want to be very specific. It's not just the asset or the tractor or the trailer, right? It's the other customers that are serviced by that carrier that also affect the service on your load, right? And I took you through an example, right, of like where they delivered before, right? Maybe you got a quick unload one day, maybe 3 out of 4 loads they deliver are on time, and that fourth one is a 3-hour unload because they've got a push at the end of the month or whatever happens, right? Whatever that is, no one knows. So when you're using those carriers over and over, you get to know them. You get to know the other routes they're running. You get to know what else is important to them. Again, that helps you prospect more effectively when you can go, hey, this carrier I've used for years in the Southeast also heads over to Arizona on Thursdays. Guess how I'm going to prospect in Arizona? Hey, I got reliable carriers I've used for years that I know are coming into your area. That to me, right, is how you add value in a prospecting.
Yeah.
But even aside from that, I want to point out one thing, right? That risk, we've talked about fraud a ton this quarter. We've done episodes with DAT. We were doing episodes, with CargoNet or Verisk coming up. We've done episodes
with Highway.
Highway. Like billions of dollars of freight are being stolen per year, right? And take that into consideration. Like that's top line numbers for like the biggest brokers in the country, right? Billions of dollars. It'd be like every load for one of the largest brokers being stolen in a year. Like that's insane how much is being stolen, right? And every single time you use a carrier that you've never used before, right? That risk is higher than one you've already used, right? So
exactly.
Not only is there risk to your shipper, is there risk to the load, but there's risk to you, the brokerage, that maybe you're using a possible double broker. Maybe somebody could steal your load. And all the criminals know that this is happening, and this is what they're exploiting. They're exploiting brokers that don't vet carriers, that don't care about relationships, that use them transactionally. And they'll go, hey, let me work my way in, grab 5 loads from you. And then a month later, you find out that like you paid the wrong carrier, they stole your money, and there's no recourse at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like,
and we don't say any of this to scare you, but it's more so to make you aware and alert of what's going on out there. If something seems too good to be true, that this carrier just happens to be right there and no deadhead and they have a great rate, you might want to double, triple check your vetting process there to make sure you're not getting duped.
Every week now, Nate, I talk to somebody that runs into this instance. They either heard about a double brokered load or they found out that they had one slip through the cracks. And then somebody I talked to yesterday, a client I've had for years, you know him, he had one slip through. They're going to start using Highway like literally this week. But when he talked, I think it was Travelers Insurance called them and said that like the same carrier and the broker that was involved, right? They said as of the day they called, there was at least $300,000 worth of fraud related to that. They think that that carrier and broker in that fraud was making about $500,000 a day in stolen loads before they got clipped.
That's insane. Well, I want to get into some of the ways you can build relationships, but first I want to take a quick break and shout out to our friends over at Lean Solutions Group. Is your freight brokerage hiring? You've got to check out Lean Solutions Group, the industry leader in nearshore staffing for logistics companies with offices in South America, Mexico, and the Philippines. They offer a wide range of roles from back office operations to web development and marketing. Oh, I can't talk today. Partner with the best. Visit www.leangroup.com to learn more. That's LEAN group.com. All right, so I want to talk about some of the ways you can really build good relationships with carriers. And a lot of this is going to mirror the same concepts of prospecting, right? When we're prospecting shippers, we're going to try to build rapport and find out what's important to our customer or our prospect. What is it that their needs are? What are their priorities? And how can we step in and offer some kind of value? And the same goes for carriers, right? Carriers are going to have their pain points too. They're going to have their frustrations and their needs, and they're going to have areas where they need help that you can offer assistance in. That could be, they're sick of deadheading for all their existing loads that they're hauling right now because they're just finding stuff off the load boards, or the brokers that they're using or the customers that they're using are spread so far apart that they're driving 200 miles empty between every single load, right? You can come in and try to prospect new business that fits their geographic location a little bit better. The same thing goes for if there's certain facilities that they do and don't like to pick up from or deliver to, right? You can assist them by being that sales arm for their company and try to find out new business opportunities for them. So I think the biggest thing is to put yourself in the mentality or in the shoes of the driver, as Dean Crow calls it. Put yourself in the driver's seat, right? Yep. And get behind the steering wheel and kind of figure out what is it like to be them and what's important to them. So, whether it's the location or where they want to pick up, stuff like that, this is what you have to find out. And you'll never know this if you just post loads on a load board and talk to a carrier that calls in and you dispatch them and move on to the next one. You've got to find out, hey, where are you guys trying to go? What does your fleet look like? What kind of equipment do you haul? What's your range that you guys operate in? Do you have any preferred lanes, right? These are super important metrics, and you can use tools like Highway to find this stuff out. You can talk to them, have it inside your TMS. There's a whole slew of ways. And if you don't track this stuff, it's literally wasted golden opportunities.
For sure. And here's the other thing too, right? Yes, like there's an opportunity cost. For every carrier you're calling, you're probably not calling a prospect, which I think is probably one of the reasons why this is not done as much as it should be done. But the reality is there needs to be a sale made to a carrier in the same way you got to make it, just like you pointed out, to a prospect.
That's why there's a role called carrier sales, right? Because you're selling. Exactly.
And I think most people think it's just like, oh, I'm selling them the load. But the reality is that like you've got to understand what's going on with this carrier to find out if you are going to work together and where are you guys going to work together, or maybe where the opportunities are or aren't, right? You can't make that decision without having a conversation and understanding them, right? And I want to make a point to everybody new out there. That doesn't mean you should spend the first month of your job calling trucking companies first, right? You do need to know at least a general idea of either where your freight's coming from or where you want to start to prospect before you pivot to the carriers, because the carriers are going to ask you these questions. These are the questions you need to be able to answer to them. Hey, I'm a carrier. You're a broker out of the blue calling me. What is my risk working with you? I don't know you. I don't know your customers. Are you going to put me on loads that are just a huge pain in the ass, that are going to be a horrible unload time or load time with tons of dwell? You're going to fight me for detention. There's a lot of risk from the carrier's point of view to work with a broker, right? So you've got to have that conversation to understand their needs, their frustrations, like you've pointed out, and to be able to talk through where the opportunities are to work together, right? The more of those conversations you can have, the more fruitful the relationship is for both of you, right? To solve the points you're making out. Okay, carrier needs this, right? Okay, well, like maybe you're not going to put them on the same types of freight that you would maybe another carrier that is prioritizing to move volume and doesn't worry about some of those things, right? Not every carrier is created equal, and lots of them have different preferences to commodity types, to types of shippers, to lanes they want to run, to Dean's point, what hours of the day you're going to be
Yeah,
loading or
that's a big one
delivering,
too.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
like they're just their
or
lifestyle.
yeah, how about the question no one ever asks, like, how fresh are you on hours? How's your week been, right? When have you been running, right? There was a question on our forum today that somebody said, a carrier posted and said, broker gave me a load, told me it was supposed to pick up so-and-so and would be able to deliver on, a window. Got to the shipper, they said, this has to deliver straight through. Carrier said, I'm out of hours. I was going into my reset after I loaded and was going to deliver after my 10. They're like, so now I'm in a position where this shipper is expecting me to do something I'm legally not allowed to do.
Yeah.
And the broker, nobody clarified this. These are the instances that are avoidable. And now you got a problem. This broker spent a whole bunch of time to get this shipper who's now pissed off. The carrier is now angry because they're put in a situation they can't do anything to resolve it. And at the end of the day, you could have asked 2 more questions, found that out to find the right carrier for the right load, and everybody could have won.
Yeah, there is so I think about like ethics and just overall customer service when it comes to brokers and carriers. And there's a reason why there's so much animosity. It's because there's bad players on both sides.
Yes.
So this example you just gave, we're going to break it down on the final mile on the next final mile Q&A episode we do. But I had an instance that I think I brought up in a recent episode as well, where a customer was trying to tell a carrier to, telling the broker to tell the carrier to avoid some sort of an inspection point going into California and use this road and yada yada. And to basically, like, the whole thing was there was a certain kind of a plant on there and it had to get fumigated to enter into California, and they got turned around at an inspection point. So the customer's like, oh, just tell them to go take this route, right? You can route them around the inspection point and they'll be fine. And for a broker to then take that advice and tell a carrier, that's, first of all, it's illegal, but it's terribly unethical. And those are the reasons why there's bad actors out there there's bad customers, right? That's a terrible customer. At least that person is bad, but it's bad on a broker to do that too. So I just think about,
for sure,
communication is like the solver of every problem in like almost every single industry, but especially ours. And you mentioned, like, how could this have been prevented? And the instance that you just brought up from someone on our Facebook group, it's 100% communication, right? I've seen that happen with people screw up reefer settings or temperatures. I've seen it with if an additional pickup was added or maybe removed and there was a breakdown in communication. So somebody shows up and they're not expected to be there, or they show up and they didn't need to be there, things like that.
Well, let's go through those, because we just, on a coaching call right before this, I went through some of the questions you should be asking from your shipper as well as your carrier, right? To make sure you've got a fit before you dispatch, right? And again, these seem simple for people that have been in it, but they're really often overlooked, right? First is value, right? I would say this is probably one of the most overlooked, right? Asking your customer for the load value, and then making sure the carrier you put on it has cargo insurance that covers that number.
Yeah.
Full stop. There is no, your contingent cargo has nothing to do with this. Your brokerage's insurance has nothing to do with this. None of that is relevant at all in this scenario. Whatever that load value is, whatever that number is, better be lower than the cargo insurance that carrier has on their deck page.
And if it's not, you need to get an all risk policy or something in place.
See the episode we did with LoadShore.
And exactly. That's a great episode that I'll walk through that. And there is the rare scenario in which a customer chooses to take the risk of not having their shipment fully insured because of the risk, the reward risk, concept in their mind. Very rare.
I've done that. But that shit better be in writing. And I've asked my customers, and I've said it over the phone, emailed it to them in writing and said, I need you to confirm you're okay with this, because I'm not willing to take this risk on your behalf. You can take it. That's your decision, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen companies that they will literally self-insure, as you would call it, right? They're like, well, the amount of loss we have in a given year is going to be on average less than what we would pay in additional all
Yes.
risk premiums. And hey, I mean, that's a side note, and that's the exception, not the rule. But yes, the primary rule would be that carrier needs to have the amount of insurance, if not more than the value of the shipment.
Here's the next one, right? And how many issues come up with this? Weight.
Oh
Or how
gosh.
many times people get a weight and a broker maybe adjusts it and shouldn't have and made it seem a little lower on their post or on their rate con than it actually was to try to, this load's a little bit heavy, but if I'll call it 43 instead of 44.5, it should be fine. Carrier goes, now the carrier is OW, gets a fine or doesn't load. All of that, again, needs to be clearly communicated to your point. What does this load weigh? That needs to be on that document, and that carrier needs to be aware that and tell you that they can scale that weight if you are close to the limits, right? And the reason that is different for every carrier is tractors weigh different, trailers weigh different amounts. So the legal weight is based on gross. So you can't just call the cargo and say, oh, it's because this number, everybody can scale it.
Yeah, think about some of the sleeper cabs that are a little bit, for lack of better terms, a little bit more decked out than others, right? They're going to have additional weight on those axles on the cab. So definitely a point of discussion and communication. I've had it happen where trailer was loaded and it wasn't overweight, but it was over on a certain axle, and the loading dock knew about it and like tried to get away. A driver hits a scale like 2 miles down the road and comes back. It's like, you guys loaded me overweight and you knew it. So that's moving a bunch of heavy steel type of items for you. But that stuff's all extremely important. And we've said it before, but it takes way more time to rebuild trust than it takes to lose that trust. So, if you know something as a broker and it's bad news or it's difficult to handle, like, hey, this is going to be very heavy, so it's going to be close. Talk about that up front. Don't blindside or surprise the driver. They're going to be unhappy with you and not want to do business in the future. Some of the other things too that I've seen. Go ahead, Ben. What you got?
Or the last two, equipment type, and the one I see overlooked a lot, 48 versus 53.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, instead of dry van, full truckload. Okay, well, we're talking 102 53s. Like, I've seen swing doors matter with some customers that I used to have that loaded a lot of plywood, because the way they loaded it in, if the doors were swing as opposed to, and I can't even remember, it's been years, but again, I've seen trucks get rejected for 48.
You're talking about like the swing doors versus your roll up door?
Correct. Yes. Which is, I think, was the case. Again, it was like 5-6 years ago, and the last one, like special requirements, right? Hey, glad you confirmed this. Any special requirements, E-tracks, if it's a reefer, chutes, right? If it's flatbeds, chains, coil racks, pipe stakes, headache racks,
tarps,
just to name a few. Tarps, the size of the tarp, right? Oh, they said they have a tarp, 4, 6, 8, or 12, right? Like, oh, I showed up. They didn't tell me I needed a 6. They didn't tell me I needed an 8. And now all of a sudden, truck's rejected. And now you have a problem that's going to take you 3 hours to solve that could have been avoided with 2 questions.
Exactly. So what I was going to lead into is, and it kind of goes into this discussion, is pay and expectations, right?
For sure.
So do you pay, like, what are your payment terms? And because this could be something that's very important to a carrier. If a carrier is going through a growth phase, or they're strapped on cash for whatever reason, or they just had a major repair, it could be very important for them to get a quick pay from you. It could also be very important that they know they're going to get paid in 28 or 30 days and not just be wondering when they're going to get paid. And also, what do I need to submit as a carrier to get paid by you, Mr. or Mrs. Broker? Do I have to send in POD, rate confirmation, scale tickets? Like, what do you need from me as a carrier so I can get settled with my payment? So those are things that are, obviously, like, don't ever mess with anyone's pay. It's a very like sensitive subject and area for just about any industry and anybody. But if they want a quick pay or they need a quick pay, is there a fee? Do they have to have GPS track in order to get that quick pay? Is there any, requirements for them to get that done? Because imagine if you're expecting a 3-day quick pay as a carrier, and the broker's like, "Oh no, you would have had to do X, Y, and Z to qualify for a quick pay with us, and you didn't do that." Be pretty pissed off, right? Be
For
really
sure.
disappointed. So that kind of stuff, that communication is extremely important. Um, it can't really drive the point home enough that like gathering all this data and information and having it organized and stored somewhere is so crucial. The same way that we have a
For sure.
CRM for our customers, you should have the same type of system in place for your carriers. It's not going to be called a CRM. It could just be called your carrier database or whatever, but you should be able to track preferred lanes, load and lane history, pricing history, equipment types, the fleet size, all that stuff. Point of contact for the dispatcher, right? Maybe the
Yep.
owner if it's a smaller company. If they cover multiple regions, maybe a dispatcher for this region versus that region, right? These are the go-to people, so you don't have to just post on the load boards when I've got a load to get covered. I could, hey, oh no, I'm going to call Dave over here. Dave handles everything east of the Mississippi for X, Y, and Z company. So that stuff's very, very important.
Yeah, and I want to go back to rate too, because I think everybody just assumes it's the dollar amount you'll pay or how fast you'll pay, right? And those are clearly the most important, right? But there are valuable things to a carrier you pointed out earlier that help them keep more of the money they're making, right? And one of the biggest ones is like deadhead. Like maybe if when you're talking to them, right, like they're deadheading 250 miles every Wednesday because of an existing customer to get to their next customer, right? Like if you're able to find a load or have a load that is half that distance to where they're delivering, but gets them closer to where they need to at their next stop, now they just saved a handful of hours in driving empty for no reason that they are now driving loaded and making money. That makes them more profitable, right?
Yeah.
And in the other markets, right? Like we're in a down market right now, rate wise, but it's not staying that way. It's a cycle, right? It's a big circle. It's going to go around no matter how quickly or slowly it does. It's still a circle. The shape doesn't change. So as we move out of this and go to the other side of things, right? Like there are lots of opportunities for you to also go back to your customer and to ask for some rate increases, for increases in service, to retain carriers that they enjoy working with, because there's a risk to your customer the same. Just like we pointed out earlier in this call, using a carrier you've never used the first time, there's always a risk. Even if they're a great carrier, you don't know they're great until you've used them, right? And to your shipper, that is one of their biggest pain points. So the better you are at working with your carriers and having real relationships, the better you are at sales to bring in more customers. It's a flywheel. The better you do it, the next one helps you get customers faster. Get customers faster, get carriers faster. Talk to your carriers more, get more customers faster. That's how that flywheel spins, right? But most people just work on half of it. It's like pedaling a bike with one leg. You can do it, but it's sure as shit not as efficient as if you use both legs, right?
It's a good
Like
analogy.
get good at also building the relationships on the other hand, not just worrying about where your next load's going to come from. Because you know what? Rather than you sitting and guessing where you're going to find the next load, how about you get back on the phone and talk to that carrier you worked with this morning and ask them where they would want some freight? Now you got your next target, and you already have the thing you didn't know what to say anyway before you picked up the call. The biggest issue people say is, I don't want to call somebody. What am I going to say? Well, the guy just told you. And in addition to that, when you call that prospect and you say you're calling on behalf of a driver because you want to help them, do you think they're going to be more or less responsive than when you called and said, I'm a broker that can do anything. Do you want to work
I
with
have
me?
trucks in the area.
Or got trucks in the area. What the hell does that mean, right? To them, all they hear is you're going to put my load on a load board with somebody I don't know, and I'm not willing to take that risk.
Yeah, I mean the using a name is really helpful too, right? If you call and say, "Hey, I've got John on he's empty here every single Tuesday," right? Goes a lot further
For
than,
sure.
"Hey, I can, I've got trucks in the area," right? So that's good stuff. Well, good conversation, man. The I would I guess action point, right? So next time you're on the phone with a carrier, ask one more question. Start with that. Ask one more question that can help strengthen that relationship. It could be as simple as, "Hey, how often are you empty here?" Right?
Yep.
So that because boom, that could be lead to repeat contract business
Yeah.
for them. It could be, um, hey, do you guys have any, do you have anyone else in the area, each week, right? Or do you guys prefer a certain region or whatever that case might be? Find out one more thing and add it to your notes inside of your TMS. So
I want to go through one last kind of example, right? Brokers, right, always ask like, well, how do you get contract freight? Like you usually start in the spot world, and then how do you really earn a dedicated lane, right? Well, this is also how a brokerage gets dedicated lanes is you ran one load with a customer, with a carrier, they did well, you ask them the questions we discussed in this episode, and you learn more about them. And let's say you find that they are going to be exactly where this load picked up for you and your customer every week because they got another customer that puts them there, right? Well, the next step is you call your customer and say, hey, John, how did he do? The driver we sent in, how were the issues? Service? Great. Hey, let me ask you while I'm here, do you guys ship this load weekly? Maybe yes, maybe no. If it's yes, right? Hey, again, the reason I was asking is because John literally delivers right by your facility every week. What's the chance that we can get this load for him next week? Maybe you get it next week, maybe you don't. But the third week you call and you do the same thing. And the fourth week and the fifth week. Because as soon as the other carrier that was running it before you came in to save the day, when somebody dropped the ball, it will happen again. Now when it happens a second time, they're like, yeah, why don't you send that guy in? Now that you've run two of them, you're way closer to that customer giving you that lane every week without thinking, without you having to do anything. Now, your driver gets the same load. The shipper doesn't worry about it. You don't have to find a truck anymore. And you've got one load that you can rely on every week of the year and that margin as part of your book of business. That's how you turn spot into dedicated. And that's really how a brokerage builds its book of business anyway.
Yep.
You can't do it without that piece. Otherwise, this is why people and brokers run out of time. They go, I can't prospect. I'm all day running around. Well, it's because you're using a different carrier every damn time. Like that takes a lot of effort. Again, pay the guy that's reliable a little bit more, never have to worry about it again, set it and forget it, and you got that revenue every week in your book of business. Shipper's happy, carrier's happy, and everybody wins.
You mentioned pay them a little more. There's often times when you can get a better rate from them because they'll offer to take a little less for the consistency.
Yes.
They're not worried about, hey, I've got a deadhead 250 miles. Now it's like, hey, I'll take a little bit less, but my costs are way less. So in the end, it's a win-win. So
there are ways to provide money or economic profits that aren't just an increase in rate, right? You can reduce time, you can increase efficiency, and
reduce deadhead, all of it. Yeah.
You help them make more money every single week by reducing the waste that they had in their routes.
I think people oftentimes, they don't realize how wasteful deadheading really is, right? It's not just fuel, it's time, it's maintenance, right? If you do 250 miles, that's 250 miles sooner that you have to change tires, oil, all that stuff.
Everything.
So, yeah.
It's a long way. I mean, for anybody out there that is a broker, you don't need to have driven a truck. Think about the last time you drove 250 miles. Was it an enjoyable experience? I don't think I've ever driven that far in my life and didn't think I didn't want to do it.
Even like 100 miles, right? Even like 100 miles would be like a more common deadhead that we see. It's still like 2 hours.
Yes.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. Good conversation. I like it. Let us know what you guys think in the comments if you're on YouTube, or leave us a review or send us a message to our website, and we will appreciate the feedback. So any final thoughts here, Ben?
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bills. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.